Last year, when I went on vacation with my family, my wife, Desiree, and our kids spent a relaxing week at the ocean. Desiree's brother, Vince, and his wife, Mandy, came to visit us on the beach for a few days. The first day they were with us, they went out swimming in the ocean a little ways, but quickly came back in towards the shore. I could see that something was wrong. As they got closer, I could tell Mandy was upset. She had lost her wedding ring. The ring was worth several $1,000s, but of course its emotional value was priceless. We went out and searched for the ring, but it was a waste of time. She wasn't even sure where she had lost it. And the waves just kept pounding in, making our search impossible. No doubt it had quickly been buried under the sand. About 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Vince and I decided to go rent an underwater metal detector. We thought it was worth a try. We weren't encouraged when the man at the rental shop laughed at us. We told him the next morning we were going to go out and search. He said by then the ring would be 4 feet under the sand. So we went out that evening, and the sun was already setting. There were very few people left on the beach. A large sea turtle went by us, and we began what seemed like a hopeless search. We weren't even sure where to begin. We knew we were looking for something valuable, but we had no idea where it was. Do you ever feel like life is like that? It's just this big search for something you know is out there somewhere. You're not sure what you're searching for or where to find it, but you just sense that there's something important out there that you were meant to find. Remember the words of that old U2 song? I still haven't found what I'm looking for. And at some point you begin to think you never will. The scriptures describe this search as a thirst that all of us have. And though we might live happy and content lives, we have moments where this deeper thirst is revealed. A thirst in our soul that longs to be quenched and it demands to be satisfied. Do you think that's true? See, I believe that all of us at one point or another experience this inner thirst. Now, we may not recognize that's what it is. I mean, would you recognize that you were physically thirsty if that's all you'd ever known, if that's all you had ever experienced? If you had never eaten food, would you recognize that the ache in your stomach was hunger? Probably not. It would likely feel normal. And you would think this is the way it's meant to be. And the only reason we know what it is to be physically thirsty and physically hungry is because we know what it's like to not be those things. So when was the last time you were really thirsty? Not just a little parched, but near dehydration, outside in the summer heat, working in the yard, and you would give $100 for a glass of water. Or have you ever ran in a big city marathon and they give you just a little cup of water, just enough to get you through to the next mile marker? Or spicy food. You sit down at a Mexican restaurant and the waiter brings you out chips and salsa, but forgets the ice water. In my opinion, this should be a punishable crime. Now here's what I want you to imagine. Imagine a world where we have this physical desire called thirst, but no water to quench it. Imagine a world that is always chips and salsa with nothing to drink. How cruel would that be, to have a natural desire and no way to satisfy it, to be forever doomed to search for satisfaction that just cannot be found? C.S. Lewis, the famous theologian and philosopher, explains that creatures are not born with a desire unless satisfaction for that desire exists. And so if a baby cries in hunger, there's such a thing as food. If a duckling longs to swim, there's such a thing as water. And if I find myself with a desire that nothing in this world can satisfy, then the most probable explanation, I was not made for this world. If no earthly pleasure fulfills this desire, maybe it was never meant to. And so C.S. Lewis points out that we are not born with a desire unless satisfaction for that desire is out there somewhere. So do you think that's valid? That there is satisfaction and fulfillment for every inner desire we may have? It was hard for me to think of an exception. If you're hungry, you can eat. If you're thirsty, you can drink. If you're tired, you can sleep. For loneliness, there's such a thing as relationships. If you're happy, you can laugh. If you're sad, you can cry. It does seem that every desire we have has some means of satisfaction or fulfillment. So is it possible that all of us have within our souls a deep desire that is meant to be fulfilled, but that nothing in this world can ultimately satisfy? So this thirst the Bible talks about, well, it's hard to label or call by name. But from time to time, we experience this inner thirst that demands satisfaction, this discontentment that demands fulfillment. And it's not that we're unhappy. Most of the time we feel pretty good, but sometimes we wonder if there isn't something more. When you were a child in your bed at night, and in the darkness of your room you looked up into the stars of the night sky, you just knew you weren't alone in this universe. Or maybe you felt it when you were in high school, and you had a friend who died in a car accident, and you sat at his funeral and you thought, is this all there is? There has to be more to life. Maybe you felt it when you got married. About a year and a half into it, you roll over in bed and you look at the person lying next to you, and this is the person who was supposed to complete you, to meet all your needs, and you just think, I'm still thirsty. It's that feeling the morning after you met someone in a club. It's that feeling when you're at the doctor's office waiting for the test results. It's that feeling when the divorce papers are served. It's that feeling when you sit alone in the apartment watching TV, desperate for the phone to ring. Or it's that feeling when we achieve our goals, we accomplish what we worked so hard for, and then we discover it didn't satisfy, not the way we thought it would. Do you know this thirst? Have you experienced this inner longing? It's more spiritual than physical, but it's just as real. When my brother-in-law and I were in the ocean searching for that wedding ring, it was easy to become discouraged. A few times the metal detector would beep, and we would dig in the sand as the waves would crash over our heads. And with nervous anticipation, we thought, could this be it? Could this be the ring? And several times we pulled out things like a piece of rusted metal. And each time we found something that wasn't what we were looking for, we became less optimistic until eventually we lost all of our enthusiasm. And the more you're disappointed, the less you feel like looking. And when we dug up the third piece of junk, my brother-in-law said what I was thinking, we're never gonna find the ring. And we decided to call it quits. And maybe you're at that point. The sun has set and you're thinking, I'm never gonna find it. And even if you can identify with this thirst I've described, you think I've tried everything. And while I might quench my thirst for a moment, it always comes back. And maybe you think it's time to just start accepting. This is the way life is. It's time to call off the search. The scriptures say that God has set eternity in the hearts of men. In other words, God has made us so that we have this inner desire that cannot ultimately be satisfied by anything in this world. We try and satisfy this thirst with relationships, but eventually we end up disappointed. We try to quench it with money or material possessions, but it always takes a little bit more. And the list goes on and on of things that we initially get excited about, but then discover to be rusted metal. But here's the thing, and you may not agree with this, and that's all right. But the Bible teaches that this desire, like every other desire, can be satisfied. That this is a thirst that is meant to be quenched. When Jesus was living here on earth, he made an amazing invitation. He said, let anyone who is thirsty come to me and drink. And so he describes himself as the fulfillment and the satisfaction of our deepest desires, he says, I am the one you've been looking for all along. Blaise Pascal was a philosopher from many years ago, and he says that all of us have this hole in our hearts. We all have this vacuum that is shaped like God. He's the only one who fits it. Now, we try and fill it with all kinds of things, but he's the only one who fits. And when he fills that hole in our hearts, he fills it perfectly, and he fills it completely. I know, you have heard all this before. Maybe your parents dragged you to church when you were a kid, or you saw a preacher on television once that reminded you a lot of the guy who sold you the used car that turned out to be a lemon. Or perhaps you had these neighbors that used to leave Christian pamphlets in your door, and now when you hear words like Jesus and church and the Bible, you become a little cynical. And I understand that. Have you ever been up late at night watching TV and an infomercial comes on? I'm ashamed to tell you about my experience with the QAVA pillow. They wisely market this product to people who can't sleep, so they're up late at night watching TV. An older Asian man comes on as the salesperson for the QAVA pillow, which for some reason in my mind made the whole thing more legitimate. I now realize it was probably because of my admiration for Mr. Miyagi off The Karate Kid that lowered my sales resistance. But the QAVA pillow is an ancient medical blend of Asian grains, and it has been a closely guarded secret of the Orient for more than 200 years. And now, for the first time, it was being made available in the United States, and this pillow could be mine. Not for $100, not for $50, but for 2 simple payments of $19.99. And if I acted right now, they would throw in a second pillow for free. Well, when the pillows arrived, I tried to be optimistic. But after one night's sleep on this bag of wheat that had a peculiar smell, I vowed then and there I would never buy anything off the television again. And so whenever an infomercial comes on, I roll my eyes and I turn the channel. No matter how impressive the product may be, the QAVA pillow has forever turned me into a cynic. And maybe when some of you hear Jesus describe himself as water that can quench your inner thirst, well, you roll your eyes. And I can understand that. I mean, maybe some other Christians have put the hard sell on you before, and they give you the salesman speech that this is the answer to all your problems, and you better act now. I'm sorry about that. Most of them mean well, but if you're like me, that just makes you more convinced this isn't for you. And others of you may be skeptical. When you hear the word Bible, you think of sitting in bed as a child, and along with Jack and the Beanstalk and Little Red Riding Hood, you read these far-fetched Bible stories. And you think of the Bible as a bunch of fairy tales, or maybe you go to church once in a while as a kid around Christmas time or Easter, and it's nice. But you're surprised that so many people buy into this. Jesus being the Son of God, born of a virgin, dying on the cross, raised from the dead. I mean, you might recognize this inner thirst, but you seriously doubt a man born some 2,000 years ago is going to be able to help much. And maybe some of you are curious. You've had someone in your life, someone you care about and trust, who says that Jesus really has made the difference, and you may be a little cynical or somewhat skeptical, but you've seen something real in them, and you can't help but wonder what it is. And maybe what you would have quickly written off as something for the naive, you're at least willing to check out because you care about them and you know it would mean something to them. Maybe the word that best describes you is satisfied. Honestly, you don't feel this inner thirst. Instead, you feel challenged and satisfied, fulfilled, happy, at least most of the time. But what if you've settled? What if there is this whole other level of satisfaction out there? When we went to the beach, it was the first time for my youngest daughter. I had told her about the ocean, But when we got to the hotel where we were staying, she saw they had a swimming pool. It was kind of a small, nothing special kind of pool, but when she saw it, she became so excited she forgot all about the ocean. She just wanted to go swimming. And I took her to the pool. After a while, I asked her if she wanted to go for a walk and to see the ocean.
Hey, Mason, come on. Let's go to the beach, huh?
She had no interest in it. She was so caught up in the swimming pool, she didn't even want to stop and consider what the ocean might be like. Eventually, I dragged her, kicking and screaming, across the street to the ocean, and the rest of the week, we never went back to the pool. Could it be that God offers us the ocean, but we've become so satisfied with our little swimming pool, getting a faster car, more square feet in the house, bigger TV, hipper clothes, new CDs, DVDs, the latest version of Madden football, and God just says, if you get out of the pool and come over here, I've got something that would blow your mind. You have no idea. By the time my brother-in-law and I were headed back into the beach, the only light we had was a cheap flashlight. We had taken only a few steps in when the metal detector beeped. I thought to myself, I'm sure it's just another piece of junk. We need to get in. But I decided to check it out. I did it half-heartedly. Vince wasn't even paying attention. And after blindly digging about 8 inches into the sand, my hands came across what felt like a ring. I handed it to Vince. It was so dark that it took him several seconds to examine it before he looked at me in disbelief and said, "This is it! This is her ring!" And we stood in the ocean, high-fiving and celebrating. After much effort and several disappointments, we had finally found what we were looking for. It was worth the search.
So in the next few weeks, we'll go on an honest and real search together to see if Jesus really is the water that truly satisfies our deepest thirst. And maybe you're just convinced you won't find anything. But perhaps, if you'll really search, you'll discover what you've been looking for all along.